For a long time now, patients in Europe have been waiting for groundbreaking medical devices that you could already get in other parts of the world. So today, we're going to dig into the EU's big plan to close that gap. It's a brand new smart track, and it's designed to get breakthrough tech from the lab to the hospital way faster than before. Let's break it all down. So here was the problem. It was a classic paradox. The EU built this fortress of safety rules, you've probably heard of them, the MDR, to keep patients safe. And that's great. But the walls were so high, the process so tough, that the most exciting new technologies were getting stuck outside. And the small guys, the startups with the really game-changing ideas, they often just couldn't afford to get in, so they took their inventions somewhere else. So this put European regulators in a real bind. I mean, how do you keep the fortress totally secure without starving the very people you're trying to protect? How do you hold on to the world's highest safety standards, but also encourage the innovation that you desperately need? Well, their answer is a whole new playbook, a guidance document called MDCG 2025-9. So in this explainer, we're going to give you the innovator's guide to this new landscape. We'll start with that paradox. Then we'll define the key to this new system, what exactly a breakthrough device is. After that, we'll dive into the new rules for gathering evidence, map out the official pathway, look at the support system for manufacturers, and finally, see how this all stacks up against the rest of the world. All right, first up, let's get to the heart of this innovation paradox, that constant battle between keeping things safe and moving things fast. This right here, this is the core philosophy. It's not a fast track that's all about cutting corners or lowering the bar. Think of it more as a smart track. The whole idea is to have a more flexible system that's built on conversation and dialogue. It's about applying those tough laws in a much smarter way, especially for tech that's truly revolutionary. So, how does a device actually get onto this smart track? Well, it all kicks off with being officially named a breakthrough device, or BTX for short. Let's really get into what that term means. So here's the official lingo. You gotta pay attention to those key phrases: novel option, serious condition, and unmet medical need. See, it's not enough for your device to just be new. It has to be a total game changer for people who have very few or maybe even zero good options. The bar is set really high, and for very good reason. To even be considered, a device has to clear two huge hurdles. And it's not one or the other. You have to prove both of these things. It must have a high degree of novelty, and it has to be expected to have a significant positive clinical impact. These two things are the foundation of the whole process. So what does novelty even mean here? Well, we're not talking about a minor software update. We're talking about a technology that's the absolute first of its kind, something that creates a whole new way of treating a condition. Or maybe it's a device made from a totally new material, or one that makes a new kind of surgery possible. The bottom line is, a small tweak to something that already exists isn't going to cut it. And then there's that second hurdle, clinical impact. The device has to be for a really serious condition, something life-threatening or debilitating. And then it's got to do one of two things: either be way, way better than what doctors are using now, or step into a space where there's nothing at all. This makes sure the program stays focused on the stuff that can truly change a patient's life. Okay, get ready, because this next part, it's probably the biggest shift in thinking in this whole new framework. We're talking about a completely new playbook for how clinical evidence gets collected. This slide really lays it all out. You see, the old way was all about piling up a literal mountain of data before you could even think about getting to market. The new Smart Track kind of flips that. It says, look, give us enough solid pre-market data to prove it's safe and that it works, and then you can collect the rest of that long-term data while patients are actually benefiting from it. This gets the tech to people who need it sooner while still making sure all the boxes for long-term safety get checked. This whole new approach really leans on something called post-market clinical follow-up, or PMCF. And this is not just sitting back and waiting for something to go wrong. No, it's a proactive, ongoing plan to gather really high-quality data from the real world after the device is already out there. For these breakthrough devices, PMCF becomes the main way you answer any lingering questions about long-term safety and performance. So how do you collect this data? Well, the guidance is super clear that this can't be just any old data. We're talking about serious, rigorous methods. As you can see here, that could mean running more traditional clinical trials, or it could be setting up long-term registries for things like implants, or even using real-world evidence from electronic health records. It really all depends on the device and what questions still need to be answered. Okay, so let's say you've got a device that fits the bill, you have a solid plan for your evidence. What's the actual process look like? Let's map out the official pathway and figure out who does what. It starts with the manufacturer going to a scientific expert panel and basically making their case. If that panel agrees, yep, this is a breakthrough, that official opinion opens the door to something called a structured dialogue with their notified body. That's the organization that does the certification. Getting to talk with them early is huge, and once a device has this designation, the notified body is supposed to move it to the front of the line. Think of it like a three-legged stool. You've got the expert panels, they're the scientific gatekeepers. Then you have the notified bodies. They're the assessment partners who are now supposed to talk with you early and often. And finally, you've got the manufacturers themselves, who have to bring a rock-solid case, a really thoughtful data plan, and be ready to collaborate. Now, this new framework isn't just a bunch of new rules and procedures. It actually comes with a toolkit of practical support, which is a huge deal, especially for the small and medium-sized companies that are so often the real engines of medical innovation. I mean, if you're a small company, predictability is everything. This guidance gives you a much clearer roadmap of what's expected. It gives you a seat at the table through that structured dialogue. And it's supposed to lead to a more streamlined and affordable assessment. Plus, and this is crucial, it creates one set of rules for the whole EU, so you're less likely to get caught in the middle of arguments between different countries. And it's not just a roadmap. The guidance actually points you to where you might find the gas money for the trip. This is a big deal. It recognizes that innovation costs money, and it highlights major EU programs that are specifically designed to fund the exact kind of high-risk, high-reward projects this whole smart track is built for. All right, for our last section, let's pull back and look at the big picture. How does this new EU smart track really fit into what's happening globally, and what does it all mean for the future of medtech in Europe? This slide gives us a great side-by-side with the well-known breakthrough program over in the US. They're both trying to do the same thing, but they go about it differently. The FDA's program is kind of like a dedicated express lane on the highway that's managed by the government. The EU's new approach is more like a flexible carpool lane that uses the existing roads but with special rules, all coordinated by independent organizations. And while both rely on post-market data, for the EU, that follow-up is really the absolute core of the entire journey. But let's be real for a second. Getting a breakthrough designation is just the ticket to the race. It is not the trophy at the end. To keep expectations in check, just look at the FDA's numbers. Over the past decade, only about 12.3% of devices that got the breakthrough label actually made it all the way to the market. It's a tough road, no matter what track you're on. And that brings us to the big final question. The EU has put together a really thoughtful, balanced framework. It's all about dialogue, flexibility, and looking at the entire life of a device. But is this smart track going to be enough? Is it enough to bring innovators back and make Europe the #1 place to launch the next big thing in medtech? Well, I guess only time will tell.